They picked the wrong ship. On a quiet morning in April of 2025, the USS Harry S. Truman sliced through the calm waters of the Red Sea. Another standard patrol, part of a larger carrier strike group keeping a close watch on shipping lanes and potential threats off the coast of Yemen. Above the deck, FA-18s circled. Inside, sailors moved through their daily routines. Then, the alarms. At 0724 local time, radar screens lit up like Christmas. Unidentified contacts, fast, low, multiple. Within seconds, combat stations were manned. The call went out, inbound missiles, possible drones, multiple vectors. This wasn't a drill. The USS Truman was under attack. Rising from somewhere along the Yemeni coastline, a salvo of projectiles screamed toward the carrier group. Cruise missiles, ballistic rockets, and at least one drone. All launched in a tight spread, clearly timed for saturation. The kind of attack designed to overwhelm even the best defenses. But this wasn't some rusted-out patrol boat, no. This was a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier with teeth. Inside the Combat Information Center, officers called out intercepts. Aegis consoles began auto-tracking. Flight deck crews were already scrambling to prep jets. Below decks, the clunk of boots hitting steel echoed like thunder. Above it all, the Phalanx CIWS turrets came to life with their signature whine, ready to turn the sky into shredded metal. And somewhere in the distance, hidden in the hills of western Yemen, Houthi commanders were watching. They thought it would be symbolic, a slap in the face, a warning. What they got instead was the fuse. Because if there's one rule when it comes to provoking the US Navy, it's this: don't miss. This wasn't random. It wasn't a lone drone acting on bad intel or a rogue unit firing blind. This was a coordinated strike, designed, timed, and executed with intent. In the minutes following the alarm, CENTCOM analysts confirmed what the USS Truman's radar already suspected: a multi-axis attack launched from western Yemen. At least 6 cruise missiles, 2 medium-range ballistic rockets, and a loitering munition drone. Likely Iranian-made, Syed-class or Shahed-class, had been fired toward the carrier group. All signs pointed to the Houthi movement, backed by Tehran and emboldened after weeks of airstrikes from the US as part of Operation Rough Rider. Just days before, US bombers had taken out a suspected weapons facility near Sana'a. This strike, it was payback. But the Houthi leadership didn't just want to damage hardware. They wanted a headline: Houthi strikes US aircraft carrier. You know, the kind of phrase that echoes across global media, rallies supporters, and flexes defiance against a superpower. The timing wasn't accidental either. Intelligence suggests that the attack came during a known air wing rotation period, when several jets were grounded for maintenance and pilots were off shift. In other words, a calculated window of vulnerability. And they didn't just aim at the Truman. Escort ships were targeted too. A Ticonderoga-class cruiser, 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, and possibly, according to the intercepted chatter, a logistics oiler bringing fuel and supplies. The Houthi strategy was simple: overwhelm with numbers. Fire enough projectiles to confuse the defense net, hoping that 1 or 2 sneak through. That's how you kill a giant, not with 1 sword, but with 1,000 cuts. But here's the problem: they forgot what the giants carry. Because the Truman wasn't alone, of course. She sailed with a full carrier strike group. Escorts bristling with missiles, systems synced for threat detection, and a doctrine sharpened by decades of naval warfare. And as the missiles tore through the sky, looking for a kill, the Navy wasn't caught flat-footed. They were already responding, already locking in, already preparing to answer fire with fire. There's a reason no one messes with a U.S. carrier strike group. The moment that first missile blip hit the radar, the USS Harry S. Truman flipped from routine to retaliatory in under 60 seconds. The bridge turned into a command hive. Radios barked orders, electronic warfare officers flooded the airwaves with jamming signals. Everyone moved like they'd rehearsed this 100 times, because they had. The Aegis combat system on board the nearby cruiser locked into oncoming threats. Track 231 confirmed hostile, speed 600 knots, altitude low. Aegis doesn't panic. It calculates. It prioritizes. And then it fires. As the data poured in, defensive layers activated like dominoes. SM-2 missiles shot skyward from the destroyers, streaking towards cruise missile targets. ESSM interceptors handled the low and fast threats, trying to skim the water. And the CIWS, those spinning, screaming Gatling guns, stood to mop up anything that got too close. From the flight deck, chaos was organized. Scramble Alert 5, Hornets now. The catapults hissed. Steam shot into the air as the deck crews launched fully armed FA-18 Super Hornets into the sky. And these weren't routine patrol birds. Each one carried full air-to-air loadout. AIM-120 AMRAAMs, AIM-9X Sidewinders, and drop tanks for extended combat air patrol over the battle zone. Within minutes, they were climbing above the Truman, scanning for anything the radars might have missed. Meanwhile, the drone threat loomed closer. From the CIC, operators vectored a second wave of fighters. One pilot locked eyes on the loitering munition heading for the fleet. Fox 3. An AMRAAM screamed off the rails and seconds later turned that drone into airborne confetti. On the deck, red shirt ordnance crews reloaded launch rails, moving like they were born on steel. The smell of jet fuel and burnt metal mixed with the roar of engines and the bark of command. And through it all, the Truman didn't even flinch. The crew was drilled for this exact scenario, not once, not twice, but weekly, monthly, and under stress. At night, in full gear, because when it's real, you don't get time to learn, you react. And that day, they did. By the time the first Houthi missile broke the horizon, the USS Truman's escorts were already 10 moves deep. Let's break down the tech wall that stood between the carrier and the destruction. First, the Aegis combat system. Think of it as the brains behind the brawn. Aegis doesn't just detect threats, it tracks hundreds of them at once. Radar arrays spin 360 degrees, scanning for missile signatures, drones, or anything flying too fast and too low. Once a threat's locked in, Aegis doesn't hesitate. It deploys SM-2 missiles, medium-range interceptors with radar-guided brains and a nose for heat. These things cruise at Mach 3 and punch like a freight train. In this strike, several SM-2s streaked towards ballistic missiles before they could arc downward into terminal phase. Second layer, ESSM, Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles. Shorter range, faster response. Perfect for low-flying cruise missiles hugging the waves. ESSMs fly in pairs, using radar homing to close the gap fast. Several of the Houthi-launched missiles were picked off in mid-glide, just 20 miles from impact. The third layer, up close and brutal. The Phalanx CIWS close-in weapon system, known as the CIWS, the ship's last line of defense. If something slips past the missiles, the CIWS takes over. It's a 20mm Vulcan cannon that fires 75 rounds per second. Yeah, per second, creating a literal wall of titanium. The sensors on this thing can literally track a bullet, and that's not a metaphor. During the attack, one rogue drone made it within 1,000 yards. Big mistake. The CIWS lit up, bright flashes, a roar of ripping steel, and suddenly that drone was expensive confetti. In the sky above, FA-18 Super Hornets were providing air cover, ready to dogfight if needed. Each armed with AIM-120 AMRAAMs, radar-guided and lethal beyond visual range. If a drone blinked the wrong way, it got smoked. The defense wasn't just a wall, it was a web, layered, lethal, and alive. The Houthi attack may have been bold, but bold doesn't beat coordinated. And definitely not this coordinated. In less than 5 minutes, it was over. The attack that was meant to shock the world, cripple a carrier, and rattle the Navy, neutralized, systematically, layer by layer. Out of 18 projectiles detected, none reached the Truman. Not one. 9 were intercepted in midair by SM-2 and ESSM missiles. Some detonated in bright flashes 30,000 feet up. Others just feet above the waves. 3 drones were shredded by Phalanx CIWS before they even had time to switch modes. A few projectiles came dangerously close, though. One cruise missile managed to ride just meters above the waterline, slipping under the radar for several seconds. But it didn't count on a CRAM system aboard an escorting destroyer. The moment it peaked above the horizon, a short-range interceptor left off its launcher and turned it into floating shrapnel. From the flight deck, it looked surreal. Flashes of light across the sky, explosions at varying altitudes. No direct hits, only the rhythmic rumble of defense systems working flawlessly. And then, silence. Sailors on the deck froze for a beat, eyes scanning the horizon, adrenaline still spiking. Smoke drifted. Spent shell casings clinked on steel. Somewhere, a faint cheer. Then orders resumed. Clear the deck, secure weapons, confirm strike logs. The Truman hadn't just survived, it had done so without a scratch. Inside, the CIC command staff replayed radar footage in real time. Confirmed intercepts, logged radar signatures, cross-referenced launch trajectories. And then someone said it. The words everyone was waiting to hear. All targets neutralized, carrier secure. That wasn't just a line. That was the moment that the narrative shifted from survival to response. Because while the Houthis thought they'd landed a blow, and all they really did was give away their position. The launch sites, the timings, the assets used. The Navy had everything they needed to answer back, and not with words, but with warheads. Back in Washington, no press release followed. No briefing, just silence. But in the belly of the Truman, crews were already prepping payloads. Jets were being rearmed. Coordinates were being loaded. Because this wasn't going to end with a clean intercept. Oh no. It was going to end with smoke over Yemen. Retribution doesn't knock, it launches. Less than 45 minutes after the last Houthi missile was swatted from the sky, Package Echo was green-lit. A pre-planned strike protocol designed for exactly this kind of situation. No guesswork, no hesitation. The Truman's hangar bay transformed into a war machine on rails. Ordnance team loaded GBU-38 JDAMs under the wings of waiting FA-18 Super Hornets. 1,000-pound smart bombs with GPS guidance. No room for error, no need for second chances. Elsewhere on the deck, a pair of EA-18G Growlers rolled forward. Electronic warfare pods already humming. Their job? Blind the enemy, jam radar, disrupt targeting, and make the Houthis fight in the dark. By 8:35 in the morning, the first catapult hissed. A Hawkeye AWACS bird went up first, eyes in the sky to coordinate every move. Then came the birds with the bite. 12 Super Hornets, fully loaded, launched in pairs, and their afterburners lighting up the morning sky like orange blades. Their route? Direct. Their objective? Surgical destruction of the exact sites used in the attack. But the Truman wasn't acting alone. From 20 miles to the east, the USS Gravely, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, opened her VLS hatches. Inside, Tomahawk cruise missiles, each with a precise GPS target loaded in. Silent, stealthy, deadly. With a rumble, the missiles roared into the sky, not to warn, but to erase. The first wave of fire rained down on a mobile SAM site near Al Hudaydah, the same one that had lit up during the Truman strike. A direct hit from a JDAM collapsed it inward like a soda can. Next target, a suspected drone warehouse, nestled in a civilian industrial zone. Growlers jammed every frequency within a 5-mile radius. Hornets dropped in low, fast, and dropped ordnance with zero drift. Precision confirmed. Multiple secondary explosions followed. Fuel, ammo, electronics, all going up in synchronized fireballs. And then the final strikes, the one command really wanted. A known command and control bunker south of Ras Isa. Buried, fortified, and hidden. Didn't matter. A Tomahawk found it anyway. Seismic sensors on the Truman picked up a blast from 60 miles away. Mission complete. No U.S. casualties, all aircraft recovered. But more importantly, message received. The Houthis wanted to make noise, the U.S. made impact. And just like that, the sky over Yemen was quiet again. Too quiet. By sunrise, the battlefield was invisible again. No more missile trails, no more glowing radar pings, just silence. And the smoldering remains of 3 destroyed launch sites, a flattened command bunker, and a Houthi drone facility that no longer existed. But make no mistake, the air was thick with tension. The Houthis didn't release a victory statement this time. No fiery broadcasts, no celebration videos. Just a vague line from their state-linked channel claiming the U.S. had targeted uninhabited structures. Right. Even Iranian media, normally first to amplify the Houthis' success, stayed quiet. Not a frame of footage, no photo of downed American equipment, just static. Behind the scenes, however, the real picture was forming. Intercepted Houthi communications revealed a logistical scramble. Rerouted orders, offline units, blacked out nodes in their command structure. The U.S. hadn't just dropped bombs, it had disrupted the whole network. And Washington? Still no podium, still no press release. Just a blank-faced, "we are monitoring the situation" line from the Pentagon, which in military speak basically means we're not done yet. More telling what was happening aboard the Truman and her escorts? Flight ops resumed before noon. Combat air patrols doubled in size. E-2D Hawkeyes now patrolled around the clock, scanning for even a whisper of radar activity along the Yemeni coast. Then came the shift in the rules of engagement. Sources later confirmed if a radar ping even resembles a fire control lock, it was now fair game. Launch on detect, a doctrine shift that flipped the entire playbook. No more waiting to get hit. Now, if it blinked, it burned. Meanwhile, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower rejoined the Truman Strike Group. 2 carriers, multiple destroyers, cruisers, and submarines. A floating fortress ready for round 2, or 3, or 10. And as commercial shipping resumed through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, every freighter now sailed with an invisible guardian watching from just beyond the horizon. So what started as an attempted strike for attention had become a clear and thunderous answer. Not just for the Houthis, but for anyone watching. The Houthis aimed to make a statement. They got one back, in missiles, in silence, and in precision. The USS Harry S. Truman never took a hit, but it answered with one of the most coordinated naval counterstrikes in recent years. No chest thumping, no headlines, just steel, speed, and message delivered. Now the Red Sea sits in uneasy stillness. The question is, for how long? Because what happened out there isn't just another clash. It was a shift in posture, in rules, in readiness. The U.S. Navy made it clear this isn't a waiting game anymore. Every drone launch, every radar blip, every attempt to probe or push could now trigger a full-blown response. So here's where we ask you. Do you think the U.S. should continue with these pinpoint retaliations? Or is it time to escalate and dismantle the threat completely? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And hey, if you want to go one step further and support this channel directly, join the fleet. You'll get loyalty badges, priority replies, and help us bring more real naval stories to the surface. Click join on our channel page and step aboard. Please don't forget to smash that like button if you learned something today. Hit subscribe if you want more real fact-based breakdowns like this, and turn on that bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, stay safe, and remember, if you're the first, you better hope they miss.